Okay.
Hi, Bradley.
Hi, Michelle. How you feeling? You all good?
Yeah, I'm okay now.
Hi, Sandy. I couldn't comment about your verbal. I just looked at your slides. They're really nice. And as I said, just a few bits of animation. I think as you find when you build points, they're more powerful than if they see them all at one time, because then they're looking at the others while you're trying to talk about the others. So the less,
I understand what you're saying.
the less you show people, with those things until you're ready to show them, the better, because otherwise, seriously, people's eyes will always go to read stuff and they're not listening to what you're saying.
It was something that we spoke to Scott about and Glenn about, and they wanted it to be just a very short, sharp, punchy presentation so they could get a really good overview of it. So that's the reason why it was probably presented in the way it was. I would much prefer to have had, you know, what we were looking for each particular page, but they only wanted it to be very short, sharp, punchy. So
good.
and I wanted the two girls to actually also present as well. So it was an interesting journey to get it all together, because there was a lot of brainstorming via Zoom that took place. And it's funny, when people haven't really brainstormed a lot, they don't understand. It's about getting information on paper, and then from there extracting that information off the paper to actually make your top four on what you're looking for. So it was good. It was a good learning curve for the girls as well. So they enjoyed the process. And now that we're sort of doing a bit of an integration back into the office. So I'll be in the office 3 days a week, and Alana will be back in 3 days a week. So at that point, there'll be Alana, Catherine and I all in together, and we'll start working on that plan of putting that information into play. So it'll be good. Be interesting to see how the journey travels. But we're getting phenomenal money up here at the moment for rentals. Crazy.
Wow.
Drug money, actually, what they call drug money. So,
Is there that big a shortage for rental properties up there?
oh, where we are, it's off its head. It's just crazy. So I've just I listed one last week, 9A Colehurst. So Glenn sold it. I managed it prior to him selling, and Glenn sold it. And then the landlord brought it, the new owner brought it back to me, because I'd done an appraisal on her property. So she's moving into the house, and there's a small little 1-bedroom cottage. So far, it floated on Friday, and there's 44 people waiting to view it.
Oh, because people want to move out of Melbourne. And are your prices going up?
Yep.
The sale prices? No,
I
not just
don't know
rental.
about sales so much. I don't have a lot to do with that. But I know that the boys are getting really good money. I've been seeing just a few things that have flipped through. Yeah, so the boys are getting good money as well. So we're still probably pretty strong where we are.
Yeah.
Which is good. Anyway.
Very good.
Hey.
Just give it one more minute, we'll get going. Okay, everybody, we might make a start. Welcome to our last session of Leadership Development Program 2020. Sounds like something on MasterChef, doesn't it? This is a really interesting module, a little bit crossover with communications, which we'll go through more quickly, but it's a lot of stuff, again, people haven't really seen. I sent you some good attachments last week for this, for presenting and all of that. And they're really good reading. So if you haven't read them already, read them after this to help solidify what you're thinking. I've been running presentation skills, goodness, since the 80s, and was fortunate to participate in like a Toastmasters program, and then ran debating club, ran presentation skills for lawyers, accountants, real estate people for many, many years. And I put this all together based on all that sort of different things I've encountered over the time. So there we go.
Grab my glasses.
Oh,
Purchase trends are.
sorry guys, according to Sarah, there's no sound. That's my fault because I didn't do it right. We're going to start over. Sound now?
I'm excited to help you enhance your communication and how your listeners respond to you. The skills and techniques I share will give you and your team immediate value.
It's important to communicate a clear and concise message if you want to influence others. But what I'm trying to say is that I may be way off base here, but to be honest with you, without feedback and coaching from others, and this may be a stupid idea, it will be difficult to enhance your ability to communicate.
We purchase trends are similar among the different age ranges, except for those who are, and make sure you get that point. And do you see these points? I want to really highlight that point. We've got a lot of trends going on. That's really important for you to get. Most individuals want to be more comfortable, thinking on their feet and getting to the point. But what they actually don't realize is the way they structure is confusing and cluttered with unnecessary words. So basically, their sentences run together and they lose their listeners. You know what I mean. The most important delivery skill is eye connection, because it's the only skill that conveys trust and believability. For the majority of us, we don't feel comfortable looking at people directly in the eye. And as a result, we lose the ability to connect, to engage, and we won't have that opportunity to influence them to take action. You're thinking, I would never.
Oh, I'm a bad presenter. All right. There we go. See? Perfect examples. It's a funny thing about so many people present and they think the concept is about the content. And we know that 93% of getting your message across is the way you use the words and the body language associated with it, which we'll cover again today. But presenting isn't about the words. It's about the whole show of presenting, whether it's one-on-one, small group, large group. It's about engaging your audience. And I've seen so many people present and they don't engage their audience. And within a matter of moments, people have lost interest. And there's a thing that they say that you have about 15 seconds in which to capture somebody's attention as to whether or not they think they should listen to you or not. Now, this isn't in a lounge room on a one-on-one. This is when you're in a room with people who have a choice to just phase out or not. It's in a bigger room, of course, in a presentation where if they're seeing lots of speakers, they're not going to pay attention to all of them, and they'll choose which ones they don't, and you have about 15 seconds. And if they don't find the topic of interest and you don't sort of mix it up, you've only got about 7 minutes max to keep people's attention. And given most presentations you give are a lot more than that, you have to work hard to do it. And so you're using a combination of words, vocal, and visual to actually make that happen. And we're going to cover that today and go through how you do all this. And again, it doesn't matter what you're using it for, whether it be marketing, you're providing client service of some kind, you're running training for staff or for clients, it's all the same. The fundamentals of presenting don't really change, just the logistics change. The bigger it gets, the bigger the forum, the more you have to think about that. But it essentially, the principles are much the same. We'll cover a number of different things today. Designing a presentation, making a presentation, preparing and using visual aids to support your presentation, which is always really handy, whether it's drawings or video or something to enhance, because most people have a very strong visual content to their learning and taking information in. And if you just use words, you're only going to appeal really to the verbal people, which are not as strong as visual. As far as many more people are visual, and everyone's got components anyway. Remember in communication, and we're going to cover some of the same things, but I'll do it very quickly, is that we talked about this second and third wave selling model. Very little time on discovery of needs, lots of time on presenting, and even more time on close. And then we looked at the third stage, which says, well, hang on, spend a lot of time on discovery, then your presentation and your close will take care of itself. It's the same thing for actually doing a presentation. The more you know about your audience and the situation that you're going to be speaking to and about, easier it is to create a good presentation, and then the least amount of time is spent on presenting. So you think about it, you spend a lot of time on figuring out what you're going to do, you then spend time on putting it all together, and then you finally with your actually doing the presentation. They always say that for an hour of training or an hour presentation, it takes about 8 hours to put it together. And there's probably a lot of truth to that. So you're spending a lot more time on this. So what most people don't do is spend a lot of time on discovery of needs. So whether let's say you're going to present to a potential client of some kind, or you've been asked to go and present to another office, or you're going to present at some sort of seminar you're involved with or conference, you really need to ask a whole lot of questions so you can get your presentation as right as possible to appeal to the audience so they want to listen. And I've sat through more than all of you combined, I guarantee you, of training and conferences and seminars. And in every single group of speakers, you get 8 speakers, you're going to have 2 or 3 who are really bad. And they don't keep your attention at all. And it's not because necessarily they got bad content. It's just they haven't prepared properly. They don't make any eye contact. They're just reading it. They got no visuals that go with it. They're very monotone. All the things that that young lady in the video showed happens. And you don't get your message across. It doesn't work. So why do the presentation? So we're going to look at all of these things that help to get the best outcome. You want to be thinking of these 3 things. So what do I want to get across? What am I trying to achieve by doing this? I'm spending time presenting for whatever reason. It might be, as Sandy just did a presentation to her directors about BDMs. It might be Ian going in to do a listing appointment, or Michelle doing a listing appointment. It might be Sarah, who's going to be presenting updated marketing plans with Beth to the directors next week. We're practicing tomorrow. We're going through a run through of that. You're then looking at your audience. What do they want to get out of it? Why are they going to listen? Why are they there in the first place? Why are they going to listen to me? What's going to be of interest to them? How am I going to get them engaged? How am I going to win them over? How am I going to achieve my objectives by making sure they achieve their objectives? And then the event and the venue. Is it somebody's lounge room? Is it an auditorium? Is it a training room? You know, you got to know. I remember early on when I was running Fletcher's Way, and when we took on the Eltham office, which was by itself at the time, there wasn't Baniel or Doreen. It was a reasonably big team. And I said, to save you guys effort, instead of coming to Canterbury, why don't you rent a venue in your area, and I'll just come there and present it. And here's what I need. And I told them all the logistics. Yep, got it. And when I went there that morning, the room we were presenting in was a beautiful room, like at a golf course or something, but it had 2 giant windows on each side of the presentation. And it was impossible to actually present with the sunlight streaming in for anybody to see anything. And no matter what I was going to try to do, it was like, PowerPoints don't work with sunlight. Simple. You know, you just can't make them work. And it was terrible. Like basically half the day, both days, nobody could see the screen. So, you know, that wasn't my fault. It wasn't their fault. Anyway, same outcome, probably took away from the quality of the event. So you're always wanting to understand needs and logistics around you. If it's an event and you're speaking, when am I speaking? Am I first, second, fifth, 10th? Am I right after lunch? Am I right before lunch? Am I right before morning or afternoon tea? You want to talk about make sure that if you're going to do video, there's going to be sound. You know, you can't take anything for granted when you're doing these things. No less than doing a listing appointment and finding out where you're going to sit and they're going to sit, as in, you know, where would you like me to sit? And make sure that you're well positioned with everybody. There's logistical things in all types of presentations. And the more time you understand this and get it nailed, the better your talk will go over, without question. We've covered this before about these 3 points of communications, but just to remind you again, you know, if you want your message to stick, basically 93% of it comes in from not the words you choose. And as I say to a lot of people, whatever you're going to say, the audience doesn't know what that is. It's only when you say it. So in the event that you stuff up some words here or there, or you leave out something they don't know, you might know, but they don't know. Nobody knows except you what you were going to say. And therefore you can relax about trying to be word perfect or get it all right, because whatever you say, it doesn't matter, because that's all they're hearing, and they're not hearing what you don't say. So, you know, I think that helps people get over it a bit when they're trying to prepare. You don't have to be word perfect at all. You don't want to be. The last thing you want to do is read a speech to people. You want it to be impromptu, and we'll talk about tips as we go through this. But remembering that, you know, using good visuals and good support of your presentation, and making sure you're mixing up your voice and highlighting things, whatever, will add a major part to your presentation. We did this again in sales, but it's really important again to understand who is going to be involved in this. You know, like, who are relevant people who are going to be there? What role do they play? Do they determine, you know, if someone's going to accept it or not? What's the perception of in the current situation? What benefits are they looking for? That's the logistics of finding out, well, if you're going to be gassed to give a talk, who are you giving it to? Why are they there? What are they trying to get out of it? How can you benefit from understanding that? How can you get your points across from that sort of thing? The more you ask, the more you will achieve. What do I have to do to make sure I get my objectives achieved? Somebody might say, for example, a listing appointment is a simple one. How much time have you allocated for our listing appointment? Oh, 15 minutes. Well, you know, as a lister, you got no hope in 15 minutes to do anything except tell them what their house is worth and what your commission is. So therefore, you don't want to do that. You want to say, well, that wouldn't really achieve the outcome of you being able to determine whether I'm the right agent for you or not. So is there a way that we can actually enlarge that time window to have a better chance? Same thing about if you've got this 1 hour talk that you've worked on and somebody wants you to do it in a half hour. You either got to say to them, well, it's not doable in a half hour, or I'm going to cut out a great deal of the information. If you're okay with that, so again, trying to make sure that you can achieve your objectives is really important. We talked about all these people before and understanding who plays each role. Just to really quick recap, the person who's footing the bill, the person who's using it, the person who's going to help recommend you to someone else or whatever, and the person guiding the decision-making people all have different outcomes, and it's the same thing. Who am I talking to? If I'm running a seminar for a group of principals, it's going to be a different approach with a different attitude than if I'm running it for a bunch of salespeople. My objectives will be different. And you got to think about that when you're doing what you're doing. So you come to the actual talk and you start to think, well, why are you doing it? What are you trying to get out of it? Because that should be your primary focus of what you're doing. Now, maybe it's to provide support and guidance to a client. Maybe that's your objective, is to make sure the client thinks you're super and you give them all their answers. But maybe it's to win business. Maybe it's to win over a potential recruit. Maybe it's to speak at a seminar and really fly the flag for the brand really well. Maybe it's a long-term thing, it could be all different things. So what I like to say is, well, what's your mission statement for your talk? What are you trying to get across? Because that way it'll help keep you focused as you start to get lost in all the detail. You forget why you're talking in the first place. Now, if you're a politician, and I've told you this, guys, before, when they have press training, and I've had that. I've had Right with press experts, gone through the whole training. When you have that, they're going to say to you that doesn't matter what you're asked, you have an objective in mind for why you've agreed to speak on this topic. It might be Victoria's current legislation regarding COVID, and you're a politician and you're going to get up, and no matter what the question comes from the newsreader, you're going to answer with what you've been prepared to do. Now, the purpose of that point is that if you have a talk that you're wanting to give, it's very easy to get lost in a lot of detail and things, and you start to morph it. What you want to keep focused on is, why am I giving this talk? What is my objective? What am I trying to get across? What is my main focus for this talk? And that will help you a lot when you're doing it. What are you trying to get across then to support that? What do you need to do to support your position? What does the audience need from you so they're actually paying attention, so that they're listening and they're interested? What are they expecting to have happen from you? Don't forget logistics, because you might not have visuals. You might only have less time than you thought. The audience might not be where you thought they were going to be sitting. Sometimes you're going to wander around to make contact with everyone. Sometimes it might be just there. Think about logistics. Lots of different ways to structure all aspects of your talk. And you got to think about, well, what's the best way to get the messages across that I'm trying to do? And we're going to cover different structures today as we sort of look through this. So I want you to just use a mythical talk. I want you to think of something that you want to get across to someone in a presentation in the near future. It can be mythical, but maybe you have a real one. Might be a listing appointment for sales or rentals, or it might be Sarah presenting to the directors, or it might be someone else presenting to someone. Whatever it is, use your task sheets that you have on Word to come up with a talk that you want to give, and think of, well, what is the mission statement? So in other words, why am I giving this? What is my objective? At the end of it, I want them to understand this is what I'm getting across. If it was a listing appointment, it would be to win the listing. You know, if it was Sarah with the directors, it would be to get your marketing plan over the line. What do I need to get across? So what key points do I need to be thinking about? What are my key messages? And you don't want to have too many of those. What does my audience need? You know, what's going to interest them? What are they trying to get out of this? Think about where you're going to present it, what logistics might be an issue for you. And then I don't know much about structure yet, but think a little bit about what structure might suit this kind of talk. Like, how would you do it? And then we're going to learn more as we go today. So go ahead and spend a few minutes on that. 5 minutes, just make up. And you're going to work on this same talk all the way through our session today, right? So this is only stage 1 of 8, about 7 stages to do it. Okay, everybody, we're going to have more time to keep working on this, but that's a start for you. So if I can get your attention back now. There's different ways of getting your message across, and I like to talk about these sort of two different things, you know. Either way, there's a simple structure of presenting what you're doing. This one is saying, you can do say, hey, I said this, I'm going to say this, I've said this to you. Sorry, let me get that right. I'm going to say this is what I'm saying, and see what I said? Same thing. I'm going to tell you this stuff today. I'm telling you this stuff today. I told you I'd tell you this. It's the same formula either way, and that's really what you're talking about is 3 stages to a presentation to get things across. We're not going to do this obviously through Zoom, but I want you to be aware of this, and it's a very useful way to get better at speaking if you're someone who gets nervy. And icebreakers are a Toastmasters concept that you'll be standing there in the room with them or sitting, and they'll say, Michelle, please stand up. You have 1 minute to talk about trees. Or Sandy, you have 1 minute to talk about tree changes. Or, you know, whatever. Ian, you got 1 minute to talk about the latest in mask fashion. You know, whatever it might be. And you have to stand up and give a 1 minute talk. And the purpose of that is to focus on how you structure something and being mindful of time. And I've seen lots and lots of presenters who, firstly, are totally oblivious to the time. And secondly, can't structure anything and they just waffle. So if you had that icebreaker and you want to just practice, just think about a topic, anything, just couches, the next trip you want to take. It doesn't really matter. It's really good to be able to speak impromptu, to get it in your head, to be able to say, all right, so I've got a piece of watermelon sitting in front of me. I just stood up and somebody said watermelon. I think, right, all right. Well, I think watermelons are very seasonal, and if you pick them at the right time of the year, they can be really, really nice. So let me tell you a little bit about how I go about choosing a watermelon. And then I might talk about the actual way it looks, feels, whatever for a little while. And then I'd summarize and say, I really encourage you to try watermelons during the summer. That's when they're nicest. And right now they're actually really good, you know, and then you do that. Any topic, and you just practice it trying to be focused. And if you're not someone who's conscious of time, having a stopwatch with you, a little, you know, Apple timer is really helpful because you got to learn to manage your time. And the reason I say that is that you find people who spend an enormous amount of time in their introduction and they run out of time, or halfway through they're getting gonged to sit down. Somebody says in a lounge room, you got 20 minutes and you spend 15 waffling on, there's no time for anything else. And so you got to do that. You want to be focused and you want to be interesting. Some key points that are going to try to keep people's interest. Practice that if you like, if you really want to get better at being able to speak when someone just asks you questions. You know, a really good thing for salespeople is to work on objections this way. Is really focus on how you answer your objections and in a very focused way. Or when they ask you questions, why Fletcher's? Why should I use you? How many homes have you sold in the area recently? All of those sort of questions you get asked, you should be really good at being able to be very concise with your response. So say is one of the methods. So you have an induction, you say what you're going to say. And remember, politicians, this is what I'm going to say, this is what I'm saying, this is what I told you I'd say. It's a really effective way of giving a talk. And it's reminding people, and this is what almost every good speaker will use, this sort of method. You don't just launch right into the detail, you get people warmed up, you're telling them why you're telling them, what you're going to tell them, how you're going to tell them that, you start to tell them it all, and then so forth. In the body, you're going to say it, you're going to have, depending on how long you have, is how many supporting points you have, how many different trees you're going to go down. The less time you have, the less variation you want to focus on some key points. In the conclusion, reiterate the key moments of what you've said, and you're going to come down to some sort of important message in your conclusion. Timing is an interesting thing. Here's, for example, of a 5-minute talk, and you can multiply that out, depends on how long your talk is, but your introduction is usually around 10 to 15% of your total time allotment, and your conclusions around 10% of that time. Therefore, the body of it is multiplied. Now, if you're giving an hour talk, that's, 12 times that, you're probably not going to use 6 minutes for your conclusion. So as the time gets stretched out, you have more time in your body rather than in adding more time to your introduction, and your conclusion. I have seen people in a 5-minute talk use 3 minutes on the introduction. Not telling you anything, just, in fact, someone I deal with all the time now, I won't say who he is because he's in a very, very important position, not at Fletcher's, but he spoke at 2 conferences I organized, and he was terrible. Like the first time, he spent like 15 or 20 minutes on the introduction before he got to anything, and he was just going so slow. And I was at another seminar where the speaker he had a half hour, and at 20 minutes he was on the introduction still. So, you see it. People either with nerves, they either go really slow or really fast. And therefore, if you pre-schedule your talk and you work out, well, my introduction is going to be, I have a 5-minute window here. I'm going to spend 30 to 45 seconds. Therefore, that's how long you're going to spend. And we'll get on to tips later. But that's a very important thing about your timing and how much you're leaving for it. And think about it for a minute. In a 5-minute talk, if you have 3.5 to 4 minutes, how many points can you make? You can't make that many and make them convincing. So you're only going to make 2 or 3 points, right? You're going to probably focus on 3 points, giving them each a little bit over a minute to make that point. You're not going to have 10. And people who go through lists of things, long lists and stuff, lose people almost instantly. First time I ran this for a law firm, I put it together, and my training manager and I worked it up, and he started at the front and I was at the back, and he said, so today we're going to do presentation skills, and here's the 20 points you need to think about. And he put 20 points up and he started just reading through each one really slowly. And after 3, I said, Jeff, stop, you're doing it all wrong. And we had a whole little routine about that, because that's what so many people do. And the room within a matter of seconds was already being lost to them. You could see people like just losing interest immediately, which is pretty funny because that's what we wanted to have happen. There's different ways to do introductions. You can do a preview of what you're going to be talking about. So the preview one would be very simple, that, hey, we have this whole new service that we're offering, and I'm really excited to be bringing that to you today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it in more detail in a moment. Your next one might be benefit, that I'm really glad you guys are giving up your time today, because this is going to prove to be so invaluable for you with regard to your health, or with regard to the way in which you go about selling real estate, or whatever it might be. This is why you got to listen, This is what you're going to get out of this. It might be a goodwill statement. I'm so appreciative of the Cancer Society giving me the time today to address you. I'm really pleased, that I have the honor today. Thank you to Matt for inviting me, so forth. Why do we do it? Well, we're trying to develop rapport with the audience. Again, whether it's one person or 20 people, we want them to like us, so they listen to us. If they don't like us and we don't connect with them, they're not going to listen. When I spoke, I used to run these seminars all over Australia at universities initially I called it an interview skills workshop for accountants, and then I did it called So You Want to Be a Lawyer for law students. And I ran it at every major university in the country, first for accounting students. And I didn't say a word as people were all coming in the room. I kept it really quiet because I was very American then. You guys don't even know I'm American now. Just kidding. But, then I had been described a very long American accent. And I wouldn't say a word until I spoke. And I would say, welcome everyone, I'm Bradley Brown, and very American. And I would immediately have everybody's attention, because that's not what they expected. And, you're trying to get their attention. You're trying to establish rapport. You're trying to give them a reason for listening at the beginning. You're trying to motivate them to pay attention. There is something in this for you. You need to listen. You're going to get so much out of this without saying those words because you can't. That's what you're saying in your introduction. Pay attention because you're going to be better off if you pay attention to me. It might be to establish credentials. Why are you up there speaking? Why should they listen to you? Hi, I'm Bradley Brown, Director and Chief Executive of the Fletcher's Group. For the last 20 years, I've had the pleasure of leading one of the longest standing real estate companies in the country. Whatever, you're just being able to get people to go, oh, here's an expert. Hi, I'm Bradley Brown. I spent 8 years as a director of human resources for, 2 national firms. Bang, talking about HR related stuff. You want to get them to want to listen. When I used to speak to the students, I would say, I was in your shoes not that long ago, and I understand exactly what you're going through and trying to understand which firms you should be looking at and how do I succeed and get the job that I want. I'm going to tell you that today. Whatever it might be, you're trying to get that across that they should listen to you. You should be telling them about what you're going to do and how long you're going to go for, because you want them to know. Because you might be saying that I have 30 minutes allocated. I'm going to talk for about 20 and leave 10 minutes for questions. Or it's my intention to actually use the entire 30 minutes. But if you had a question throughout, I've got some time, to answer those. I won't be taking any questions or answers today, and I will be finishing at 3 o'clock. You might be talking about the scope, like what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to focus very much today on how, as a salesperson, you can build yourself a better practice. I'm not talking about listing skills or anything like that. I'm talking about how you build a better practice. And, let people know where's the boundaries, what are you talking about, and so forth. So with the talk you're going to give, think about what style of introduction is going to work best for it. What are the key points that you want to get across to motivate, establish credentials, the scope and duration of your talk. And remember, this is just your introduction, which, in that 5-minute talk is, 30 to 45 seconds. And how long do you have for your talk? So just focus on that for the moment. Keep building your talk. Okay, we might keep going, and you've got time to fill in the blanks as you go, because there's more of these exercises. So the body of the presentation, which is our main thrust of getting our points across, has also various ways of doing it to get what you want across. And time is of, obviously, might be dates. So, you know, if we're talking about the advent of the modern salesperson and we look back into the 1960s, we find this. And then by the 70s, we were seeing this happen, and by the 80s. It could be a series of events that happened over different days and hours and time frames. So, you know, if we look back at the, you know, how do you construct a project like this? Well, if we looked at a timeline, we would say, well, you start 90 days ahead of time with X, Y, or Z, and then at 85 days, and you might just work backwards. So you can use time as a basis of creating some sort of structure around your key points. That's one way of obviously doing it. Another way is spatial. It might be, I'm just, sorry, we just put this together. I'm just trying to see, no, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to check something. So spatial is maybe like Sandy showed me a PowerPoint she put together for her directors today, and she did a spatial where she was showing the different relationships between the BDMs, the leasing people, the clients, and she was showing timeframes like that as well. It might be something where you've got a hub in the middle with your key objective, and here's your points. Remember the TQS stuff where it talked about total quality service and it had the 7 points around it. Same with quality. Build your talk around it. It's a Fletcher's thing. We built that way. So it's a Fletcher's thing. We've got all of our key points around the outside. And as you opened up each page, it was the next one of those points. And that was the way we created our stage one. So doing diagrams, people can look at it, can see how relationships fit together. It obviously works really well for people designing things, showing construction, showing engineering type things, showing relationships between different departments. Org charts are obviously spatial if you're trying to describe how a company functions, things like that. Could be cause and effect, that you're talking about, well, here's different scenarios. If this is to happen, then this is the way you'd go about dealing with that situation. It could be in a listing appointment and you're teaching that as a skill, and you talk about, well, if you're the front runner, this is the way you go about it. If they want to have an agenda, this is how you go about it. If you're coming from behind where they already have a preferred agent, it's not you, this is the way you might want to go about it. If you're the first agent in, you might have a different approach than if you're the last agent in. If they've used you before, you're going to have a different approach. So you can talk about cause and effect. If this happens, this happens. So there's 3 different outcomes that you could expect from this. Either they're going to list on the spot, they're going to tell you they'd like you to come back for another appointment, or, and each one has a different outcome, and you can talk about those. It might be a process. It's going to take people through steps. That here's Fletcher's way approach to running an open. And here's our 15-step plan of how you run an open. And that's what we do when we're teaching Fletcher's way. And we just run through a process. Here's how you use Active Pipe. Here's the process. And there's visual screens along with it to show you what each process step has. We just did a presentation a couple hours ago, me, Beth, Sarah, Caro, and Tracy on a new software we're trialing in Blackburn called Rita. It's an AI working through our database to prioritize calls. And they basically used a flow spatial chart to show us what we're going to do today. They then went through using process through the body of it. If you guys recall that were on that call, it's exactly what they did. Here's what we're going to cover today. And then they used process to show us each step of the way of what they'd be doing. And the conclusion in that case was call to action. What's next? All right, this is what we have to do after this session. It might be principle. You might be talking about some form of law or some thing. If we're talking about legislation training on completing authorities and all that, all the CAV regulations. You do it from a principle point of view. Well, this is the law, and this is why we have to follow it, and this is what you have to do. It could be you're providing a solution approach, that you've been called in to address problems, and you're giving the solution of how we do it, and you're going to come at it from that angle. Those of you who remember Jeopardy, remember they give you the answer and you got to come up with the question. You know, there's all different ways, and it's what suits your talk determines the best way to structure your points. So when you think about your body of your talk, what would be a good format to get your points across that you're wanting to do? What are those points you need to cover? Remember, in a 5-minute talk, if you gave 3 main points with some support for each one of the 3, you've used up your body time, you know? And really, you don't want to bamboozle people. The more you throw in words, the less effective they are, because you lose the main thrust. So if there's 3 main points you really want to get across, focus on those. If there are 5 main points you got to get across, focus on those 5. But don't add in other stuff and fluff just to think I've thought of everything. That's not the way you get your point across. You focus on what's most important, and you really want them to take away. Reiterate that. Add more support for that point. Instead of coming up with more points, focus on that point as to why that's so important, and give the reasons why that's so important, and then go on to your next point and give those reasons. And that's what you do. And then look at, well, what examples do I have to support those points? Like, what am I going to actually talk about if I had to, and how long do I have for my body? And then you think about that. So that's the next section. So spend a few minutes on that, building your talk. Okay, we might continue on now, guys. Again, you have more opportunity to keep building on your presentation as we go. Conclusions are really important because it should lead to the next stage of whatever's going to happen. Remember the say approach. You're going to remind them of what you said. Audiences remember the first and last impression always, and so how you finish up is really important. A trick about that, and we're going to get on to tips and tricks as part of this, but is saying in conclusion or in summary or to wrap it up, and then you follow it with what you're going to say, because they're going to, oh, right, we're entering that stage now. Yeah, we're almost done. And then if you are saying something repeating, it's clear that you're repeating. So what I shared with you today were my 3 main beliefs in why you should use Fletcher's. Number 1, we're the best firm on the planet. Number 2, we're the best firm on the planet. Number 3, we're the best firm on the planet. Whatever it is. And it doesn't then sound like, well, haven't I already heard this? Because you're actually telling them in conclusion, in summary, to just recap the main points. To finish us off today, I'd like to say, whatever those are, the transition from the body should be clear in the summary. You should never enter new information in the conclusion that you haven't already covered. You should only reiterate the key things you wanted to get across. The only thing new you're going to say is if there's a call to action or a thank you, but no new information, no new data, no new examples, no new ideas. Because once you start the conclusion, everybody's getting in their chairs, they're sitting up, and they're thinking, yeah, this is almost over, good. You know, and you start throwing out new stuff, you start waffling on, you really lose everybody. So it's a chance to recap, to leave a really good lasting impression, and that's what you do. You might want to say, in conclusion, hey, in summary, you know, you raise your voice, you make it clearly stand out. I want to leave you with a call to action. I want to leave you with something to really think about. I want to reiterate these 3 points. You know, you want to make a strong. Carol, what are you doing drawing on my talk? Can you guys see that? I don't know. I don't know how you're doing it, Carol. You're fired. You're not my co-presenter anymore.
What happened? Is that me?
I don't know. It said Caro.
Oh, it's probably
I don't even know how it's being. I don't even know how it's being done, Sarah. I don't even know how to do it myself, and it's my presentation.
Sorry.
But we need to get rid of those. Again, to summarize key points, you're just summarizing what we talked about. You might have this point as for questions. Maybe you are going to take questions, and you've prepared for that, and you want to take questions, or it's part of the requirement. You have to. If it's a listing appointment, you have to. It might be part of the presentation. They say we always want to have time for questions. So when I'm doing a presentation, I'll always say, they say, we'd like you to speak for an hour. And I would say, is that an hour inclusive of questions? Is there a question period, or is question period on top of that? So I know what's expected. Oh no, we want to leave about 15 minutes for questions. So you have an hour for your talk and 15 minutes. Or no, there's not going to be any questions today. We don't want audience participation. All right, whatever it is, just know it. Call to action. What's supposed to happen? What do I want from you? What did you learn from this today? I can give you more information. I can help you more if you contact me. What are you going to do about this? Are you going to make a change? Are you going to do something different? What's your call to action to end your talk, if you have one? If it's a sales thing, you should have one. All right, fantastic. You're ready to sign the authority right now, or when do you want me back? You know, those sort of things. You should try to end on a positive always, for sure. Once again, thank you so much for your time today. It was great the questions were wonderful. It was great to address this audience. You guys were really fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity of being here, all of those sort of things. Oh, this ain't going away. Who drew on my screen, Caroline, and how do we get rid of it? Sarah, you're my fixer person.
Didn't you ever watch Mr. Squiggle, Bradley? You could make a masterpiece out of that.
I don't even know what Mr. Squiggle is, but no, but
That's an Australian
me, man.
reference. Sorry.
Sarah, I've done something.
It's not me. Definitely not me.
it
Why
said
does-
Carol. Is Caroline, are you here?
I'm here, but I'm having trouble with my internet. It keeps dropping out. So
Are you
Wait.
drawing?
You drew
I'm
on
on
my
my phone
screen.
sorry.
You drew all over my screen and it won't go away. So can you erase it? Can you erase whatever you did, however you did it? You
know what I did.
clever person.
Oh my God. I think I'm going to leave and rejoin. I'll come back.
Well, that's not going to get rid of my crayons.
Oh, Sarah,
They weren't there before, right? It's just come on while we're on here.
Sarah, listen, the 3 showed up and it had Caro's name underneath them.
Oh, Caro, what the hell?
God. I don't know. What the hell exactly?
Oh, maybe she's
Hang
pressed
on.
annotate. Oh, let me see if that does it. Oh, yeah. Caro, make sure you don't press annotate.
Okay, am I out now?
Oh.
Are you out of a job? What are you out of?
I think
Okay,
so.
now,
Oh,
okay. You
God.
just don't press annotate. Yeah, stop, Caro. Just stop touching.
Okay.
Hang on,
I
How do
won't
we-
touch anything.
But how do we get rid of my love hearts now, Sarah?
undo.
All right, show Carol, go undo, undo, undo.
God,
I
where's
can't take it away first.
That shouldn't be a feature that people are allowed to do on somebody else's presentation.
eraser? Should I push eraser?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Undo.
There's no undo key. It
Yes,
just
there
says pen, arrow, color, eraser,
So
save.
view options, annotate, and then there's an eraser. Promise.
Well, I pushed on eraser.
Yep, and then erase. Oh, well, undo if you can.
Oh my God.
Carol, just do both.
But I'm not getting those options, Sarah. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Does it matter? For now?
Matters to me. I'm very distracted by those red
Hang on.
lines.
More.
This was part of the presentation about distraction.
I think it was. You should have told me about it as the presenter.
Oh, just keep you on your toes.
Right. Carol, keep working on figuring out how to get rid of these lines, okay?
All right. Oh God. Okay.
The conclusion must explain, again, why you've been up there. What have you said? What are your key points? Why did you say it? Why does it make good sense? It's just some sort of selling conclusion to what you talked about without adding new information. So in your mock-up, in your examples, what style of conclusion would suit you? What are the key points you want to reiterate in that? What sort of conclusion do you want? Do you want a call to action? Do you want to re-summarize? Do you want to provide a thank you and an acknowledgement? A combination of all of those? What's the end game for you as you're finishing up that talk? If you can think about that for a few minutes. Oh, I got an antidote, don't think. Clear all drawings. Look at that, I fixed it. What good's having a team when you can just do it all yourself? Why even bother delegating, huh?
Pretty sure I told you about the annotate button.
Probably, Sarah. Morgan, I think there's a bee sneaking up behind you.
It's a big B, mate, but he's gone now.
Swatted away. All right, folks, we might keep going. And again, you're going to have more time. Visual aids should support but not distract from your presentation. Sometimes people play loud music or there's too much movement too fast and too much happening and people aren't really listening to the words. People will always 100% gravitate towards movement and visual. So if you have something happening behind you with pictures changing all the time and you're talking, chances are real good they're not listening to you, they're watching and thinking about the pictures. So I've always found that the best presentations have video, and when the video's running, you're not talking. And when you're using pictures, they're static in the sense they come up, they're there, you can show, people can see them for a moment, and then you talk and do your thing. When it's too much going on, our eyes are distracted, our eyes are drawn to it, and no matter what we want to think, we don't concentrate on two things at once. So if you're really trying to get your message across, you're not going to allow visuals to get in the way of it, and they do all the time. People have too much going on, doesn't really work. Color, movement, sound are all really important because you're trying to appeal to the whole room. And some people, I'm a color person. Like, when we were doing the silo art trail recently, we saw 10 sets of silos and 2 or 3 of them were in black and white or sort of like a sepia. And they were really great artwork, but I didn't really look at them anywhere near as much as I looked at the ones with color, because I'm into color. Other people are into shapes or movement or whatever. And so you want to have, and remember that some people are visual, some people are auditory, and some people are kinesthetic, which is feelings. And more people are visual than the other two, but collectively they make up 100%. Predominantly everyone's stronger in one than the other, but they're not that big a difference. It might be 50, 40, 30, whatever it is, 50, 30, 20, whatever the number is. So visuals are more, but they're not necessarily dominant in the sense that there aren't the others. So some people are very into feelings. Some people are very into the audio. So having sound, having emotions in your talk as much as you can, having things that elicit emotions, having movement and color, it's all great. You just don't want it to compete with you when you're trying to talk, because people won't listen to you. I made a comment to Sandy that she put together a really good presentation. She asked me to comment about it, and a couple of the slides had like say this all coming up at one time. And I said to her that I would just use the the tools in the software to have them come out point by point, because as soon as you put up 4 points of information and you're talking about point 1, everyone in the room is reading the next 3 points. And remember, your objective of all of this stuff is for them to listen to you and get the message across. You're not doing it because you got nothing else to do. You're doing it because you want your message to get across. And the more you keep that focus like that of everybody, then the better chance you have. And look, to be blunt, I won best speaker at almost every TRET conference I spoke at, except the Disney one, which shits me because the guy from Disneyland had all these great props. He gave everybody Disney characters. And of course he won, but I was second. But I normally would win because I used visuals really well, you know, and I would watch so many other presenters who would have so much garbage up on the screen that you couldn't even read it, or they'd have so much movement going on, or they didn't have any at all. And nobody can listen to a voice for very long. You gotta have other stuff in support. Remember your logistics, you know, you might not be able to get sound across the whole room, or maybe people, you know, we had one of our awards night at the MCG and they promised us that everything would be fine by putting people in tables along the bar, and the people down the bar couldn't hear. And, you know, the MCG promised us, yes, there's sound throughout the whole place, it won't be a problem. Well, it was. And so for those people, it was a really disappointing time, although they probably just laughed and had more fun. But, you know, you got to remember your logistics. Is the room suitable for video? Is there going to be sound that's good quality? Is there multiple screens so people in different areas can see it? You know, you go to a concert and they have screens in all different places so everybody can see a big screen. You got to think about all those when you're looking at your visual aids. If, you know, you got to be good at the integration of all that stuff in your talk. Like, you got to be good at, like, I don't use whiteboards or flip charts very much in my presentations because I'm a really bad writer. And no matter what I do, I can't make a flip chart or whiteboard look good, right? So I don't use them much. I'm much more about PowerPoint, and I use a little bit of it where I need to, and I don't do it a lot. Whereas, you know, Chris Elder's great on a whiteboard. His writing looks great. He does it really well, and he uses it a lot. You know, you use what works for you that enhances your presentation, that enhances what you're about. You don't want it to detract from it.
A very different form of reproduction where they have to carry a large load for about a year, but it appears to be free, all tied up with efficient springs and this recycling of energy that seems to occur within those springs, tendons in the back legs.
You know, it's meant to make your presentation better, not to get everybody not listening, you know.
Very different.
Obviously, there's PowerPoint and there's a couple others these days that really help. You could use DVD, video. As we talked about, you know, some people are really good on whiteboards. And if you're writing a lot of notes, like you're facilitating a session, electronic whiteboards are great because you can print them out and everybody can have copies of the notes. Charts are really good if you want to be ripping them off and putting them on, or having people use them on the tables and write up their own notes from their breakout sessions. You know, they work pretty well. Having handouts for people. I'll go in the other room while you do that. Having handouts for people so they can take notes away with them as necessary is a really good way of doing it. You know, that's something that you use a lot. And, you know, it's funny because when I did the TRET sessions, when I first started doing TRET, which is, you know, the John McGraw training stuff, AREC and the John McGraw Leadership Conference and all that, no one else gave notes. And when I first wanted to give notes out, they were like, we don't have notes. I said, well, what if I give you the notes? Can you get them out to everyone's chairs? Because I think they're really helpful for people. Excuse me. So I almost always give out notes, and now it's obviously what happens at conferences. So giving out handouts so people can work on that. Giveaways are great. Ask Mr. Disney. You know, if you can give people something to take away, they love it. Everybody loves something, you know. When I launched my book, my first published book, I did it at Lee Woodward's Principals Conference with 300 people. And Lee talked about in the address that at the end of my talk, everybody would receive a book. And that's what happened afterwards. Everybody was given one. It was really exciting for everybody. People love to get stuff. I actually said that to Tret, the organizer. I said, you know, this would be, you guys have all these people selling books in there, but it doesn't cost you very much to get a book to each participant. And it would be a really positive session. And they didn't do it. Can't win everything. So think about in your talk, what visual aids would you want to use to enhance your presentation? How much time will each of your sections take? You haven't written it all, but one of the things you really think about is what words can I do without? Because the less wordy you are, the more focused you are, the more successful your talk usually is. So thinking about those sort of things. So just think a little bit about how you would use visual aids in that to enhance your presentation.
Sarah, I have to comment on those kittens.
Oh my God, they're my foster kittens. I've just let them run free.
They are gorgeous and they're quite a distraction, Bradley, sorry.
Oh,
Movement. What do I say? You know, you got stuff going on.
But look how many there are. They're beautiful.
oh, well, I just found out I won't be able to take them for desexing until early Jan, so they're going to be huge by the time they go.
Oh, no.
But they're tiny now, so they're cute.
They're gorgeous.
How many, Sarah's a foster mother. How many litters does this one make?
17.
Wow.
Over like 2 years, I think, though.
Wow.
Or something. I don't know.
You've been doing it more than 2 years. All right, let's keep moving, everyone. You know, they've often talked about in people's lists of fears that public speaking is their number one fear. And I think they haven't really thought that through to come up with this is your number one fear. But yeah, for a lot of people, it can be a real issue. There's lots of things to think about. You've got, you know, nerves. You might not feel that, you know, you can present very well in terms of your vocal and getting that out. You know, some people are really terrible with their hand movements, you know, like they're just really bad. And I was interviewing a kid the other day and I said, look, put your hands on your lap. I want you to do well. And you're going like this, you know, you're totally distracting. Just put your hands down. I was coaching him for another interview, not mine, but for someone else, you know. And body language is really important because remember, your vocal and your body language is 93% of your message. Might be dress. You might not be dressed appropriately, or you might not have the right clothes and so forth. All of these can become presentation issues, or maybe you lack preparation. You haven't been given enough time, or you haven't put enough time into it. I can tell you that so many people who are asked to present leave it to the last minute to put it together. They don't practice. They think that they know their topic well enough, and that as a result, they'll just smash it. And they don't. They get up and they're really pretty bad. And, you know, years and years and years ago, when Tim Heaviside first started doing talks at training, and he was very new at it, I got him a gig at AREC, but I didn't want him to speak as a speaker because he wasn't at that level yet. He is now. And I said, I want him to be interviewed. I want Tim to sit on a stool with somebody really good who interviews him about what he does to be successful. And it went off and it was fantastic. And Tim, they wanted to do a video, and we said, we'll do our own video. And we used Visual Domain to create a band because Tim's the video king. And we did a fantastic video of Tim. It smashed the other videos that were done for the other people on the panel. And Tim was interviewed really, really well. He answered the questions really well. If he had to stand up there and give a half-hour, 45-minute talk at that time in front of 2,000 people, he would have struggled. Now he wouldn't, but those days he would. So you sort of, I wanted to make sure he succeeded, not anything else. So you sort of deal with all of those issues, because I knew he'd be nervous. I knew he'd never addressed a big group like that before. And that's not where you start in front of 2,500 peers at AREC, you know. You build up to those sort of things. But doing it the way we did it, it was very successful. So nerves, there's lots of things you can do to overcome nerves, and they're really important. And the first is the fact that mind over matter is to think about the physiological response to nervousness is exactly the same as it is to excitement. Same thing. Your body doesn't know the difference. Your adrenaline glands start producing adrenaline. You start to have your heart beat faster. You start to sweat more. Your body heats up. And whether you're excited or nervous, exactly the same thing. So what you do in your mind is you say, I'm really excited about this talk. And you don't lead yourself to get worked up over it for the days and weeks ahead. You just say, I'm really excited. It's a great opportunity. I'm excited about it. Because ultimately your mind doesn't know the difference, and your body doesn't know the difference anyway. It's what your mind is telling it. So you're just really excited. Are you nervous about a listening appointment, or are you excited? Are you nervous to go out and meet someone, you know, for the first time, or are you just excited? And you think about that, and it really does help a great deal. I'm excited. I'm not nervous. The audience doesn't know what they don't know. In other words, that they don't know what you haven't said. As I said to you at the beginning of this talk, it doesn't matter if you miss sentences or words out of your talk. Particularly, you don't want to memorize it anyway. And it doesn't matter. You just say what you're going to say, and you'll be a lot more successful. That's the problem with thinking you've got to give this delivered talk word for word or memorize something, because then when you don't get it right, you have a problem. I'm listening to the biography of Martin Sheen and his son, Emilio Estevez. It's written by both of them as a biography. And Emilio's talking about one of the first times he went live on stage, and he forgot his first set of lines, and it threw him off completely. He couldn't remember anything. He got so nervous as a result. Now that's different because he's an actor and he's supposed to have his lines, but just by screwing up a bit, it screwed up the whole talk. And I've seen that so many times when people get going at a talk and they get the beginning not right, and that nerves just keep going. So the audience don't know what they don't know. One of the things I do is the only part of my talk that is memorized is my opening. So my first phrasing coming out of my mouth is perfect. And I work on the timing and I work on the level of how loud it would be. So I always get to wherever I'm going to speak at a conference, I always go the day before or early in the morning before anybody's there. And I go up to the mic, I look around the room, I see what the room looks like. I speak and I say to the people in the back, how's that sound level? And I work on my speed. And so if I'm going to get up and talk at AREC, I'm going to say, hello, I'm Bradley Brown. I'm director of, I was going to say director of humorous. I'm director and CEO of the Fletcher's Group. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today. What a great audience. I have it all down, my first phrase. So it comes out and I think, wow, they're going to think, wow, he's a good speaker. We want to listen to him. And then the rest is easy. If you watch the beginning, you go in too fast or too slow, or you forget your name, things like that, you really put yourself on the back foot. So I like that starting point. And the more you prepare, the more you're going to get over all of these other things. The more you know your talk, the more easily it is to deliver it, the less you're going to be nervous about it. And remember, the reason you're giving a talk or you're doing a listing appointment or whatever is because you're the expert. You've been asked to do it. Therefore, you're better than the people who are listening. And that's always something to really think about, that you're the one who's up there addressing them. And you should never give a talk on a topic you're not really familiar with, because then you're going to have all sorts of problems. So whatever you're talking about is stuff you're comfortable with. Just like, listening to Emilio Estevez talk about writing and directing movies. Never write or direct a movie about something you don't know about, because it's really difficult. Do things about topics know your topic. Do your warm-up exercises, so as you're practicing, practice exactly what it's going to be like. And you don't practice it really fast. You practice it the same tone as you want to deliver it. You practice it the same loudness that you want to deliver it. I used to run lines with Seychelles all the time, interacting, and they teach them to learn the lines, just learn the lines first, then add your body language and everything to it, but learn the lines. So she would learn all her lines, and the director's notes would be there as to how they wanted her to deliver it, and then we'd work on the delivery. Do your warm-up exercises. How am I going to present this? Am I standing? Am I sitting? Is it a question and answer? How long do I have? How fast am I going to be? I was giving a talk at AREC a few years ago, and I've spoken at AREC like three times, in the principals conference like 5 times. And I was the last speaker on the last day, the last time. And I thank them very much for that, because that's not what you want, but it's the session they gave me. And the guy 2 persons before me was a pig. Honestly, he was an absolute pig. He was a Sydney principal. You can't even believe what went on. He went so far over time. He refused to get off the stage, that the moderator was saying to him, you have to finish now. And he's saying, mate, I'll finish when I'm done, and don't bother me. And it was horrendous. Like, it was this whole fight going on. We were on the side watching. And anyway, by the time I got on, it was like 20 minutes less time than what I was supposed to have, because they wanted to finish on time. And instead of trying to shove it all in, I just cut out parts. I just went right through the slides, the ones I wasn't going to cover in more detail, because I didn't want to rush everything else, because it takes away from the presentation. You're better off to cover less material well than try to cover more not so well. Breathing techniques really help if you've got nerves, deep breathing beforehand to really relax yourself. I find burning off the adrenaline is really helpful. So, doing lots of pacing beforehand, so you burn off any excess energy that you've got. They say running your wrists, not cutting them, but putting them under cold water in the tap, and then hot water, then cold water, will help turn off the adrenaline. I don't really get nervous most of the time, but I do the walking to get rid of any energy, and I focus on my talk, and I take my deep breaths to relax. you know, you don't want to be uptight. You just want to nice and relax, get yourself relaxed in a relaxed frame of mind, relaxed body, and your talk will be a lot more powerful. It'll be a lot better than if you're really uptight, you know. I'm not sure what before the event. Oh, that's just what I was telling you right now. The sort of things I do right before the event. You know, I pace and try to relax and try to focus on it and get rid of all distractions well before your talk's going to go. Don't have your phone and don't be doing other things. Just be focused on what you're going to do. Just like going to a listing appointment, you should be sitting in your car for 5 minutes before the listing appointment, putting your phone away, focusing on that listing appointment, what you're going to do, what you need to say to the vendor, all those things. Be ready to really rock and roll for that business. Vocal techniques, practice the speed, the pace of your talk. You know, the way you set the tone at the start is the way you'll go through your talk. If you're too fast, you're going to be too fast. If you're too slow, you're too slow. You want to get the right speed. I've seen people, to be frank, unbelievable. They might give a 30-minute talk in 7 minutes. They might give in a 30-minute talk. They might have an introduction that goes for 20 because they've got their pace and everything all wrong. And you need to just practice that pace. Hi, I'm Bradley Brown, Director and Chief Executive of the Fletcher's Group. I mean, that's the pace I want to speak at a conference, or I want to speak at in front of a group of people, or when I'm running training. You got to think about your vocal, and you know, when are you going to have emphasis? What things? What are you going to, you know, lower your voice so you get people's attention? If you just speak in a monotone, you lose people, even if you have visuals. Remember, though, each time you put a different visual on the screen, that's the beauty of PowerPoint. It draws their eye to it. So you keep getting their re-attention as they, you know, go on mini holidays, as Nick Stewart used to call it. Where are you going to have a pause and making sure you're looking at the audience? What hand gestures might you use if you're going to make key points? Now, if you're natural and you do it all the time, these things are just going to be naturally for you. For example, I don't memorize my talks at all. I have my PowerPoints, I know what I'm going to be saying, and then I just speak. And my hand gestures and my pauses and my emphasis would come, to be frank, pretty natural, but I've done a lot of it. But when I coach people, I haven't done a lot of it. Write it into your talk in broad terms, but never deliver a talk from writing unless you can avoid it. If you're so nervous that you can't do anything else, then do what I told you many sessions ago in communications. I got this girl Nadia to do years ago, and take her talk and with highlighters build in rises, falls, pauses, eye contact, hand gestures using 5 different colors. And then she gave a talk that looked very animated, but she was still reading it off a speech. You know, all the politicians are reading off those clear teleprompters in front of them, you know, but yet that's how we do our videos now with Res, you know, they've got those prompters in front of them, but yet you're still using eye contact, visuals, you know, and hand movement and all those things in support. Don't read it no matter what you do, unless you've really worked on the emphasis throughout the document, or else you will fail. No debate about that in my view. We did cover body language a lot in communications, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time, but you know, eye contact is super important when you're making your points. In a big room, you know, in giving a talk to a lot of people, number one, you might not even be able to see them if the lights are down, or but looking at the audience is far better than looking above the audience, because whilst they can't tell you're looking directly at them, they can tell you're not looking at them. So eye contact's really important. Your hand and arm actions in talking is a distraction, or it's really important. You know, I want to emphasize this is a positive. I'd like you all to take this in. What questions do you have for me? You know, those sort of body languages work. You know, when you want to take questions, you say, you know, you step forward and say, now, who's got some questions for me, versus stepping back and going like this. You know, that doesn't look like you want to take questions. Hey, I'd love to take some questions. I'd like everyone included. You know, those sort of body language things are positive. Props, you know, are you speaking from a lectern? For the Fletcher's Awards night, we have to have a lectern because we have different speakers coming up the whole night who need the notes. So we have lecterns. And sometimes at conferences, you'll have lecterns. At a conference with a PowerPoint, I would never use a lectern. A lot of speakers do. I don't. I like to walk around the stage because I think my movement attracts attention. I move from one spot and stop and talk for a while, then I move to another spot and stop and talk for a while. People who pace up and down during their whole talk are really distracting, and I've seen a lot of that. If you have a lectern, you don't want to grab the lectern and really hold on like you're going to kill it, which is what nerves do. The problem with notes, to be frank, if you're on a lectern and you got your notes down there, fine. If you're holding notes, chances are good you've got a bit of nerves, and if you're holding notes, everyone's going to see that your notes are shaking, and that happens a lot. On that point, your voice, when you're nervous, has a little bit of that timbre, I think it's called, in it, where it vibrates a little bit. You know, most people don't know what your voice sounds like, and you hear it about 5-fold of what they hear. So even though you feel like you're a little bit different than normal, you got a bit of nerves, they probably don't hear it unless it's really bad. But if you're holding your notes and you got nerves and they're shaking, everybody in the room knows. So you're best not to hold your notes unless you're a speaker who's not going to be nervous. Even a pointer, you can see people really nervous with their electronic pointers and they're shaking their hand and the pointer's going all over the place. So if you're nervous, you want to avoid those things that are going to lead people to see that you're nervous. Again, considering all the visual aids that we might have, and I wouldn't use a whiteboard unless you're really good at it, and it's a small room because people can't see it in a big room anyway, but they obviously come in handy. We've talked about corporate dress through communications module. It's about dressing to suit the event. And, you know, like most conferences say, the speakers wear suits. You ask them, I always ask ahead of time, how would you like me dressed? Look, the room's going to be really casual. Maybe smart casual would be good. Everyone's going to be suit, wear a suit, you know, ties on, ties off. You know, for ladies, am I wearing a business suit? Or, you know, just find out ahead of time, I think is really important. So when you get to the preparation stage, as you guys have worked through today, you're getting this clear objective or mission for your talk. You'll have to understand your needs, the audience needs, logistics, as we talked about. You start to, and this is a lovely thing. In fact, Sandy said earlier today about people not knowing how to brainstorm when we were talking about something. Brainstorm the ideas that support your talk. So you might start with your talk is, I want to explain the fundamentals of a listing appointment. And I'm going to brainstorm everything that's involved in a listing appointment. But I'm not going to use all of it, but I'm going to brainstorm it all out. And I might have people help me, and I might come up with 20 things. And I think, well, there are 20 things, but I only have a half hour. I can only cover in a half hour 6 or 7 really well, or I can cover 10 really well. I can give notes on the rest, but I'm just going to focus on the key 6 or 7 or the key 3. But you come up with all these other points that might be useful as little tangents to what you're talking about or whatever. But remember, you don't want to distract the attention from what you're trying to really get across. Work out your structure. What's it going to look like? What's going to be your structure for your introduction, your body, and your conclusion? Right? So what's the best way I'm going to do this? How's my introduction going to go? Which are the methods? What's the best way to structure this? Is it visual? Sorry, is it a spatial? Is it a time? Is it a process? Is it, you know, whatever works? And conclusion. What do I want to get across in that conclusion? Nothing new. What points do I want to reiterate? So here's my 3 main points from today's talk. These are the 3 things I want you to really take away with you. Number 1, 2, 3, bang. So here's my call to action. I want you to go home, and in the next week, I want you to run 2 listing appointments based around those 3 points. You work out what your answers are for those 3 that support the way you like to list, and I guarantee you'll be more successful in the future. You start to then draft it out. And whilst I say to you, you're not going to read your speech, you got to write it out. Now, you may not write out every word you're talking about. You don't have to do that, but you should write out all your bullet points of what you want to cover. And if it doesn't show up somewhere in these notes, when you present with PowerPoint, you only ever have no more than 7 words in a line and no more than 7 lines on a slide, right? You never put up stuff and read it. You never put up paragraphs that people have to try to read from the audience. You just have words like I have, and you have no more than 7 words in a line, no more than 7 lines in a slide, and that's a good thing to think about. Read through your talk, read through the key points, think about have you missed anything, is it out of order, is it going to be confusing? I used to run Fletcher's Way over 2 days just for salespeople, and it was a logical flow from basically prospecting through client for life. But because we now involve property management in day one, I can't do that. I've got to focus more on the topics that suit everybody. Therefore, the logical flow of Fletcher's Way is gone for salespeople. They might be dealing with communication skills. They might be dealing with open for inspections, and then all of a sudden they're dealing with listings on the next day. I think it was better before, but I needed to include property management in it. So, you know, we had to restructure it. So does it make sense? Does it work for you? What visual aids, gestures, vocals do I want to focus on? How am I going to enhance this talk, whatever it is, so it's successful? You know, every BDA opportunity Sandy goes into is worth about $3,000 to her company, $1,000, $1,500 a year, $3,000 capital. Every listing appointment a sales guy goes on is worth $15,000 to $20,000. Shouldn't you practice and get really good at it and use all your things, use your graphs, use your visual displays to support your presentation? So when you're talking to people, it's the best possible listing appointment. Yes, that's what you should do. Rehearse.
Can I just say something there?
No, I didn't say there was audience participation.
Oh, sorry about that. Anyway.
Go ahead, Sandy.
There's something that a lot of people don't realize, and it's actually what their face looks like when they speak. And I know this because this is something that we had to do. Whenever I go into a new, so say I was to present a presentation to, you know, a group, I would always go into the bathroom with my notes and practice in front of the mirror. It is a really good way to harness your nerves, and it's a really good way to know exactly what you look like and how you're going to present. It also helps with your speed. So, and it would be the same if going into a listing for a salesperson. I know it sounds silly, but you need to know what you look like when you want to emphasize things and how you can change your facial expression to actually hit marks where people will go, oh, okay, and lean forward. So I don't know. It's just a tip that I was taught a long time ago when presenting, and it's been a real heaven for me. So,
yeah, that's I agree with you 100%. And that's this next line here is tape it. You know, there's nothing better than watching yourself to see how you actually look and what's convincing, what's not convincing, which answers did you do really well. Another thing is just even doing it on audio. You got your phone right in front of you. Use your Apple or your whatever you've got and just record it. You know, ask a question and say your answer and go, does that sound convincing? Can I do that better? If you're giving a talk and you've written down your talk or your main points, just if you're not going to do a visual, and you can record yourself, video yourself and look at it. It's so easy these days. Or record it and listen to it. One of the best guys I know in real estate, Stephen Devine, who's spoken to Fletcher's many times, Stephen spent hours and hours and hours putting all his listing presentation, all his objections, everything on audio. He put them onto cassettes in the old days, and he used to listen to them in his car over and over again. And there's nothing he can't answer. You know, he's so convincing because he just listened, go, no, I could do that better. I could be more persuasive, and he'd redo it. And so I agree with Sandy, and that's a really important thing to be doing. Okay, so in your talk, you should put the final touches on what you would talk about, thinking about the structure, what technique, you know, what subject you want to do it on. You should rehearse at least 3 times. You should tape it. So we're not going to stop on this, but when you're giving a talk, that's what you should be really thinking of. I'm going to put it together. We're using the right techniques. I'm going to rehearse it. I'm going to record it, audio or particularly video, because then you see how you look. And it's so easy these days with your phone. Just record it, do it in front of an audience, as in a family member. Say, was I convincing? You know, why should I use Fletcher's? And you give your answer. You know, are you convincing? All is really, really important. You know, if we were physically doing this at Fletcher's, the last session is small groups doing presentations, but I'm not doing that this time given the way we're running it, but we've often done that. But that's what you should do. Record it, watch it later, see it, see how others see it. And would you buy from you? Would you want to listen to that talk? Be objective. Ask someone you live with as a loved one to listen and go, was that good? Would you listen to it? What do you think? Very powerful way of dealing with all that. Before we move off this, so just any questions, comments, thoughts at all about, you know, presentation skills, what we've talked about today? Okay, well, we've had a long journey from when we go back and think about change management, and we think about all the things we covered in terms of understanding how change happens and the 5-step planning cycle. We looked at communication skills in terms of how you get messages across. We did, you know, Wooden, remember how long ago that was? We did Wooden and Powell and Covey and Maxwell, and we covered 4 different effective leaders and how they go about doing their thing, how they influence people. And I was talking to someone just yesterday about the emotional bank account and about deposits and withdrawals and how important it is to understand that. And then we went on to quality topics around TQS. First, we looked at very briefly quality in the manufacturing sector, but also about TQS. And then we looked at cycle time reduction, sort of help analyze situations and to realize the value of time and how important it is to minimize the time it takes to do anything. And we finished today on presentations, on putting it all together and being able to deliver, to win business or influence people or get a message across or improve your job or whatever it is, and how you most effectively get that message across. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Any questions, comments, you know, about anything that we've covered over the journey?
Andy, hi, Nithya. I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you. It's the first leadership course I've been a part of, and being a new leader, I've learned so much from this, and certainly so much of it I'll implement, and I'm sure I'll probably contact you over and over again to pick your brain on other things. But it's just been absolutely amazing, and I would encourage anyone that is a leader. So I guess we're leaders all in our own right in different ways and that, but to be involved in this, it's just been phenomenal. It's been absolutely amazing. So I just thank you for offering it to us and letting us be part of it.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to have had such a long association with John Ross and your team. You know, I love you guys, and I'm seeing such a great progress of the business, and so it's good to see, you know, committed people like you and Morgan and some others in John's team.
Thanks, Brady.
All right, everybody, thank you. And I'm going to send you a final sort of email, and we'll be sending out the last tape. They'll still be available on YouTube. Obviously, you've got the links. They're not going anywhere. And you're welcome to share those with friends or colleagues or, you know, family if you think that would help. And you've got all of the written materials of all types. So I've enjoyed doing it. It's been different. Interesting. Again, you know, I think there's like 16 people in this session today. And if it was physically in the class, we started with 38. We would have had 34, 35 sitting there today. So it's just interesting, the online. And there's several people who have told me that they're following it online, that they don't have the time during office hours, but they're doing it. But it's just interesting how greater commitment there is for the physical presence, even though people were driving up to an hour to get to Fletcher's and an hour home. But yet they showed up every session, it's just interesting sort of psychology around just having it online versus in person. Anyway, thank you all very much, and have a great week.
Thank you very much, Bradley.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Bradley.
you. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Bradley. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bradley.
You're welcome, everyone.